All right, good morning, and thank you for being here. Today, I want to take a moment to address the governor's continued and pervasive attempts to mislead Kentuckians. Andy Beshear is constantly working to rewrite his failed record. It's become a pattern. In February, he inflated the numbers of teacher vacancies. In March, he said more Kentuckians are employed than ever before in our state's history. In fact, there are fewer people working today than the day he took office. Recently, his administration exaggerated a drop in homicides, having somehow lost track of at least 100 homicides right here in Louisville. And in recent weeks, Andy Beshear has looked directly into a camera and lied about his record on gender reassignment surgeries for minors. When it came to banning access to these life-altering surgeries and drugs for kids, Beshear had a clear and easy choice: to sign the bill to protect Kentucky's kids or to veto it. He chose to veto it. In his own direct-to-camera ad, Beshear says he has always opposed gender reassignment surgeries and that they don't happen in Kentucky. Again, he said they don't happen in Kentucky. But the truth is simple. In March, a University of Kentucky clinic admitted it performed gender reassignment surgeries on minors to members of the General Assembly. The letter was sent to Representative James Tipton. It was quoted on the floor of the state Senate. The letter shows that these surgeries did, in fact, occur and were occurring when Andy Beshear vetoed Senate Bill 150. Andy Beshear now says that he consulted with the Fairness Campaign about whether or not these surgeries were taking place. Now, why did he ask a liberal interest group and not one of the state's leading medical providers? Let's clearly state what happened here. Andy Beshear apparently outsourced his medical advice to the Fairness Campaign. According to the Herald Leader, the provider now says these procedures have completely stopped since passage of Senate Bill 150. That should say it all. These procedures ended when the legislature overrode Andy Beshear's veto. If this governor had even a shred of a relationship with our General Assembly, he would have known the truth. So either he didn't know that these surgeries were happening, or he did, and he just lied about it. I'm not sure which is worse. This governor continues to mislead. He misleads not only the public, but also you, the press. So the question for the citizens of Kentucky is, have we had enough? Andy Beshear has had ample opportunity over the last 3.5 years to stand up for Kentucky values. In the heat of a campaign, he is getting more and more desperate. He can't stand to tell you the truth. Kentucky values are under attack, and this situation is a clear demonstration of what happens when we do not have leaders who actively work to protect our Kentucky values. Let me also say that I know this is a difficult and sensitive subject. I believe every child is a gift from God. And I believe parents are trying to do what they think is best and are trusting healthcare professionals to guide them in these decisions. I have empathy for these children and the families facing these incredibly difficult decisions. But I do not think that the solution for these kids is moving to the most extreme option of life-altering drugs and surgery during their formative years. These are minors. These are our children, and that is why this issue is so important. Now, in the months since Governor Beshear vetoed Senate Bill 150, many groups around the world have started to sound the alarm about these surgeries and therapies. In fact, in March, Norway said it would revise its policies and begin restricting puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries to clinical research settings. So has Finland, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. All over the globe, countries are reconsidering these policies in order to protect children. All over the globe, except in Democrat-led states and in Andy Beshear's office. It's not just European countries. Just last week, the American Association of Pediatrics authorized a systematic review of evidence to guide and update for the organization's policies on this matter. 19 states have passed laws this year to protect our children. Kentucky is one of them. But Andy Beshear would much rather have us be on the side of California. He's out of step with Kentucky, and he's certainly out of step with our values. He knows it, but he continues to mislead Kentuckians about who he truly is. But we know the real Andy Beshear. He's going to do everything he can to cling to power here in Kentucky, and that includes cozying up to the radical left that is committed to pushing radical gender ideology on our kids and on our families. I'm running for governor because I want to fight for Kentucky, for the communities we call home, and for the children we hope will have a better life here in our Commonwealth. May God bless you, God bless Kentucky, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have. If you don't have any, that's all right as well. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think it's worth making a distinction between the mastectomies that they're performing versus what is generally called gender reassignment surgery with genital surgeries?
Well, what I think is Andy Beshear went on television and lied to Kentuckians and said that these procedures aren't happening here in Kentucky. And there is a report, a letter from the University of Kentucky directly refuting that. And that is an issue that we've seen with Andy Beshear. There's a pattern, whether, as I pointed to earlier, it's the number of homicides that have occurred here in Kentucky, whether it's the jobs numbers, and now gender reassignment surgery. Again, at the end of the day, as I've talked about earlier, there's two Andy Beshears. There's TV Andy. He lies to you about jobs, the economy, lies to you about his record on various things. And then there's Frankfurt Andy, who vetoes tax cuts. He protects transgender surgeries for kids. He vetoes legislation that would have banned biological males from playing in women's sports, even though we spent decades trying to protect women's sports. That is the real Andy Beshear. And I think Kentuckians on November 7th will send the real Andy Beshear home.
Do you think gender-affirming care for adults should be banned in Kentucky?
Well, I think our legislature did an appropriate thing in looking at protecting our children. And I think that's a very strong distinction that our legislature made. And I'm proud of the work that our legislature undertook on this very important subject.
Following up on that, but do you support it for adults?
Well, I support what our legislature did in protecting our children. Again, adults can make different decisions, but this is about protecting kids and making sure that we don't rob them of youth and innocence.
On a slightly different note, as you may have heard, JCPS canceled classes today and for the rest of the week because of bus shortages. Do you have any comment on Marty Polio's leadership or anything about that situation?
Well, as I've always said, I have the biggest heart for public education, and this is something that hit home with us. My sister-in-law works at Echo Trail, the school that just opened. There was a lot of excitement and energy around the opening of Echo Trail yesterday. And then I was on my run this morning, and I said, something doesn't seem right. There's not as many buses out, and I come back into the house and recognize that school has been canceled because of a lack of, I guess, preparation by JCPS. Now, what I will say is that I know the school board here spent nearly 2 meetings looking at ways in which to defy Senate Bill 150. My judgment, they should have been planning and preparing for this school year, making sure that our drivers were acclimated to their bus routes, making sure that, again, our schools have to get back to the basics. And when they pay too much attention and too much focus and figure out ways to use a bus to send kids to Frankfurt to protest, but not make sure that those kids are able to go to school, there's something wrong with that system. Our teachers are working extremely hard. Again, I just said my sister-in-law works in the Jefferson County school system. She works hard. My wife, Mackenzie, spent nearly 7 years as an Oldham County school teacher, teaching 5th and 3rd grade. I know our teachers are working hard. We've got to do everything we can for them. And what we saw from the school board and leadership here in Jefferson County today was really a disservice to them. And let me just say, the disservice doesn't stop there. Andy Beshear had a decision to make in 2020. What decision did he make? To lock down our schools, to aid to the learning loss that we see by our children. That's not strong leadership for our state. We need new leadership that's going to look after our families, going to make sure that we have a world-class education system, one in which our schools are about reading, writing, and math. They're not incubators for liberal and progressive ideas. And the end result being that you don't see things like what happened today occur, and tomorrow, where school is canceled because we can't get our bus routes right.
And you just brought up the JCPS's multiple meetings over SB 150 and how to implement it. Obviously, they have decided to implement it in part. Can you speak to that, how you view their implementation process?
Well, look, the great struggle here is that they spent several meetings figuring out ways in which to defy Senate Bill 150. And the end result of that is that kids are not in school today and won't be in school tomorrow. It's a shame. And again, we need new leadership from the top in the governor's office that is going to bring attention to issues like this. Our teachers are working incredibly hard. And I know that there are a lot of them that are frustrated that they are not in school today to help our kids learn. And the Jefferson County School Board did them absolutely no favors because they spent more time talking about gender ideology than they did making sure that our bus routes were ready for our children on the first couple of days of school.
November will be here before we know it.
Caroline, don't remind me of that.
At this point in the campaign season, how do you think things are going for you?
We feel very good. And every day, including today, where we get to talk about our record and our values and contrast that with Andy Beshear's values, is a good day for us on the campaign. The fact that this governor is out of step and has demonstrated that time and time again makes it clear that Kentucky is going to move in a different direction on November 7th. One of the things I want you all to sort of take note of, and no one really brought this up, but at Fancy Farm, imagine having a governor that halfway through part of his ticket speaking decides to get up and leave while the remainder of his ticket is still speaking. If I would have done that, that would have been a news story. Andy Beshear does that, no one says anything. But it demonstrates the difference and the contrast in our tickets. The fact that I stayed, me and Mackenzie stayed to the very end to make sure that folks on our ticket, across the ticket, knew that we supported them, we're with them 100% of the way. And I think at the end of the day, Kentucky, whether you're a Republican or an independent or a Democrat, you're going to see the difference in the quality of the statewide candidates that the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, is offering to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I hope you'll choose us on November 7th, and we can usher in a new era here in the Commonwealth, one in which Kentucky ultimately is the best and brightest version of itself, a Kentucky that can be a shining city on a hill, a model and example for the rest of the nation to follow. That is what this race is about. It's about making sure that we push forward ideals that have been with this country since its very inception, those ideals being faith, family, and community.
There are concerns about the mental health of trans youth and also just mental health crisis in general among our youth. What plans do you have that if you were elected for your administration?
Well, I certainly believe, mental health is a great challenge that we have here in the Commonwealth. And it was exacerbated by the fact that we put people in silos and kept them from seeing people for almost 2 years. That's something that Andy Beshear decided to do. He decided to shut down so much of our industry, so much of our healthcare system, and we're now dealing with the ramifications of that. So I want to work with our General Assembly to make sure that we have strong and adequate mental health care here in Kentucky, because that's important. Again, that is a downstream consequence and sometimes an upstream result or of the opioid epidemic. And I've been fighting vigorously on the front of the opioid epidemic. I've brought in nearly $900 million into the state to address the mental health challenges, to help with opioid abatement. And so we're going to continue to fight for those things in the governor's office. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning. God bless you.